Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Kenji. Good morning.
Hi, my peoples.
Hey.
Hi, Kenji. Good morning.
How are you doing, Zippy? We
I'm
missed
very
you
well,
last
thank
week.
you. Sorry?
We missed you last week.
Yeah, I know I missed you guys too, but it was fun to just listen to you guys.
Yeah, we had such a good conversation with Kevin Kanyotu and Tony. Yeah, there were people who I think they were in the mountain for a week because they came with wisdom upon wisdom.
They're men full of wisdom for sure.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, those who are joining us, today we're going to be talking about business recovery tools. We're on the third part of this series. I think this will be the last part. And our major focus today is going to be the workforce and also some of the changes that have also happened with stakeholders in your business. So we'll be exploring that. But before we start, I'd like we just do a quick intro. I'm your host. I'm Kenji Keremi, and I'm more of a digital consultant. There's Tony, who's going to introduce himself. Tony.
Yes. Thank you very much. My name is Anthony Kuria. I am one of the a partner at Aurum Consultants. My remit is handling risk advisory, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Oh, fantastic. Zippy, and Zippora.
I actually love Zippy. My name is Zippora. Some people call me Zippy or Zip. And I am so grateful to be here this morning. I work at Aurum Consultants, one of the partners, and I'm in charge of HR advisory.
Fantastic. Thanks, Zippy. Good to have you. Now, I like to kick things off with a story. And I was reading an article, I think it was like 2 weeks back, and it was about how Airbnb has chopped almost half of their workforce. So, it's not that I try and follow some of these, tragic stories of employees and what's happening in the industry. It's just like, I like to see what's happening globally so that I have a bigger picture and I'm not living in this cocoon, here in Nairobi, Kenya. So I read that about 1,500 employees were actually going to be shelved. They were moving into more of contractual agreements, and also I think half of them were only going to report to work. So most were either had to be given forced leave, or some even their contracts were terminated. Others had to be, and more of tier 1, the middle managers to the senior managers were actually the ones who had to report to the office, and they had also changed the layout of their office. That social distancing is it's a real thing. Like, the policies, especially in the US, are very stringent, so they've restructured even the floor space, even just how they sit. And I'm like, wow, it looks weird. Everyone now looks like a manager. Everyone has a corner office, but the idea is, we are trying to also make sure that we take care of each other and we don't infect each other. I want to start with you, Zippy. The many changes that have happened in the workforce, and you being a consultant, HR consultant, a lot of businesses have come to you asking for solutions on how we can still stay afloat. What have been the changes or the trends that you've seen in the workforce?
Interesting you sharing that story, Kenji, because a lot is changing in the work space. And looking at the current scenario in our own country, let's contextualize it into our own country. The ministry actually has put measures in place where If you're going to recall employees back to work, then you have to put some certain measures in place. Like employees have to keep a 2-meter distance. And of course, that is going to call for us to completely change the floor plan of the office. Is going to make employers have to relook at, do we really need everyone coming back to the office, or do we need to have some teams working from home? And I think this has been the talk of employees working from home, employees working from the office. And again, as Kenyans, I think sometimes we tend to go back to the norm very quickly, because when this began, we thought it's going to be a short term, but again, it's looking like it's going to be a longer term issue. So again, we need to relook at our structure, our office space, and see, do we need to have everyone coming in? And even before we start looking at the office structure, we need to relook at the number of employees we have. This situation has called employees to relook at their workforce. Do we need all these employees? Do we need employees taking up new challenges? How do we re-engineer our workforce and ensure that the employees we have are actually doing what they need to do to help us recover during this season? So there's a lot of shifts and changes happening right now to re-engineer how we are doing business and how we are handling employees at the workplace.
Oh, and also and the government is really taking these measures very seriously. I was at a restaurant the other day having a meeting, and the attendant, or the person who came to serve us, was very adamant when it came to space. So she was just like, hey guys, you're a group of 3. I'd advise if you join your tables and sit across each other. And I'm like, I sit tumevaa mask. In English, we've worn our masks. But the attendant was like, no, government officials could pop in anytime, and we don't want our establishment to be closed, or we don't want to be in trouble with the law. And I respected that. I mean, I realized that Kenyans are actually taking measures, and drastic measures, to protect everyone at large, not just the customers that come in, their employees, and everyone they are in contact with. But Zipporah, I've also realized there's been so many changes when it comes to guys getting around contracts. I mean, employees themselves don't even understand what kind of contracts they should get into with employers. What can safeguard their interests, because they're just looking for jobs and they don't read the fine print. I mean, majority just get a job and they're like, nice, I have placement here, let's go. But what are the things also an employee should look out for in terms of the contractual agreements they're going into with employers?
Katie, before I even talk about the contracts, just in relation to what you've just mentioned about the social distance at the workplace, as an employer, think about it like this. If you have your staff coming to the office and one employee happens to have COVID, what will happen is everyone else who has interacted with that employee will have to go to self-quarantine or the government quarantine. So in essence, what that will mean, you might have to actually shut down your office. So even as an employer, as we think about employees coming back to the office, we need to think about the long-term plan. We need to look at all the risk exposures to our employees and to the business as well. In the event we have a complete shutdown of the office, then how are we going to revive the business when everyone is down? So there's a lot of thinking that needs to happen actually for employers as they make these decisions. Now, when we come to the issue of contracts, I think one of the things we have to put in mind is before COVID, if you are an employer, you had employees, and those employees have contracts, whether written or non-written, and the law is very clear about contractual agreements. Now, from an employer's perspective, you might find yourself in a situation where you're realizing it's becoming difficult for me to meet the obligations of this contract. So one of the things that employers need to ask themselves is, what are the options that I have? A lot of employers have resorted into sending employees on unpaid leave, or sending employees, on pay or pay cuts. And again, you cannot do this without relooking at the contractual agreement in totality, where you need to actually discuss these issues with the employees. So assume you need to send your employees on unpaid leave because there are industries that are seriously affected and the employees will be away for a very long time. Then what options do they have? Number one, I think you need to discuss with the employees and let them understand how your business has been affected and what measures you're putting in place to safeguard the survival of the business. So if you're going to send employees on unpaid leave, number one, you need to have a discussion, and that needs to be agreeable to the employee. Because again, the moment you send employees on unpaid leave and there's no mutual agreement, then you open a door for other issues to come up, like labor related issues. So there needs to be agreement, there needs to be documentation that is signed by both parties that this is what we have agreed. You're taking this number of days of unpaid leave. And the same applies to pay cuts. If employees are going to take pay cuts, then again, there needs to be agreement and you need to have signed documentation with the employees who are having to take pay cuts. Now, on the side of the employee, and this might be a very harsh season for employees because they're finding themselves victims of a circumstance. Now, assuming as an employee you are to say, I am not taking an unpaid leave or I'm not taking a pay cut, and your employer is actually not able to sustain you, then you are only pushing your employer to take actually other drastic measures which might result to losing actually your employment. So there's a lot of dialogue that is required during this season for employers and employees to understand how they are going to handle this season. Again, going forward as employees, as employers, we need to think about then how do we structure our contract so that in the event we have a disruption like this, then it's very clear how the contractual agreement can be ended if the business is unable to sustain the contract agreement.
Yeah, and just to put, maybe to capsulate what you've talked about, is this needs a lot of care.
Yes.
And over communication from employers.
Yes.
Because I feel like the base of it all is just being human. Empathizing and putting yourself in the employee's shoe. There may be family people, they have dependents and all that. You just have to be just to have a good level of care, because again, we also see we are reestablishing a new normal, and there's some companies that have gotten a bad reputation. Some of them are in the labor courts right now. I'm sure the cases in the labor court right now have piled up. And for us, it just shows also the leadership. It shows the core of your leadership. How does that look like? Are you guys more money or people driven? Yeah. But if we can just move over to let's talk about the business changes, and especially when it comes to stakeholders. Stakeholders could be, if in your business, you're a retail business, now we're talking suppliers. It could be even for your business, you could have taken a loan. What's your relationship with the bank? What's your relationship with the insurer? What's your relationship with any person who affects the day-to-day running of a business? So, Tony.
Yes.
I just want to give some context here. What happened the other day, and what's funny is I realized that spaces have been repurposed. E.g., churches have turned into production houses. They're not places of congregation. Or guys are not meeting anymore. When you go there, you will see you have your cameras, the youth service is happening in one corner, adult service in another, and the kids content is being produced. It's become another royal media. So I'm just like, spaces are being repurposed. Yeah? I also noticed that I was going I was looking for some accessory for a computer, and I went to this shop that I normally get stuff in Westlands, and the guy had closed shop. So I could see through because he has a glass window. I could see he turned his office into a store. So it's not a shop anymore. It's not. You can't physically get in. So he's left a number. He's now showing you he's online. He has his Facebook and his Instagram account there, and then he tells you, hey, if you need XYZ, call me. So I'm seeing how businesses have reinvented themselves, and I'm like, hey, truly, you cannot stay stagnant. What has been your experience? What have you noticed, and especially in your field, what have you come to see? What has changed?
Okay, that's a very interesting example that you've used there of a businessman shifting very quickly to be able to operate, online, and churches also converting it to something else. One of the things that struck me, and I was discussing with Zipporah before we began recording, I think I'm correct in this, Nairobi Hospital, like most hospitals in Nairobi and across the country, have seen numbers of customers, these people who are unwell, reduce dramatically because of first of all because of the lockdowns that have been in Nairobi, and then also because there is this phobia that if you go to hospital, whatever ailment you have might be labeled as caused by COVID. And since most Kenyans are afraid of being put under isolation, for some reason, hospitals are not getting the number of patients whom, in their case, these are clients, are coming in. So I read somewhere that Nairobi Hospital, just like the churches you're describing, is now offering some of their facilities for conferencing. Offering people a place where they can come and do meetings. If you have a meeting of a group of people, now that social distancing protocols have become seriously enforced, so a place like Kenyatta International Conference Center, KICC, that could fill 3,000 people, right now it can only fill 500. So the idea is those wanting to do conferencing will struggle to get space, and they saw an opportunity there which they can use for purposes of giving people an alternative to video conferencing, and therefore also earning some money. That gives you an example of the opportunities that are there, and institutions looking for other ways to be able to handle the fact that their income flows from their traditional sources of income have gone down. Yeah. Now, when it comes to vendors, suppliers, creditors, and such like, my take is that going forward, as things change dramatically in the way we do business. If you are determined to keep going determined to keep going, and the opportunity is there, like now the person who is your supplier for electronics parts, then you've got to look carefully. Who are those who owe me? Yeah. Who are your debtors? Then who are your creditors? How is your supply chain structure? How does it look like? Then above all, do you still have a market for your product? To use the example of where you went to buy an electronic part, it means this guy still has a market for his products. It's only that now the way he was distributing it has changed. He has realized, I'd rather reach a wider market through digital media, where through Facebook, through Instagram, through WhatsApp, people can be able to order, and then I can link with somebody who can do the delivery, and therefore I may make a smaller percentage of the profit, but I'll reach a wider audience, and therefore I'll still be in business. When it comes to now businessmen like those ones, they'll need to look, who are my suppliers? Who supply me with these electronic goods that I am selling? And then how do I reach out to my clients? Are there people who owe me? Do I have bank loans? Do I have creditors who are probably knocking at my door? And therefore, how is my cash flow position looking at? And he or she will probably look and see if my cash flow position is not so bad, because when I supply Kenji with his electronic parts, he pays me cash. So at least my cash flows are okay. Now I look back at my bankers. You look back and look at my creditors, my source of capital. How do I have a loan with them? And if I do, can I go and renegotiate with them in order not to have the previous pre-COVID terms continuing during this season? Can I negotiate with them for lower rates of interest, for a longer repayment period, so that I can still have the cash that can enable me to move more and more of those goods? So it's really, for business people and entrepreneurs, you've got to sit down and look at your business. Look at, first of all, am I still in business? Do I still have a market for my products? If the answer is yes, then how is my supply chain looking? Do I have any debtors? If yes, then you need to have a plan with them. If no, if yours is selling by cash, then the key is now keeping that flow coming in. People knowing that you're still in business, whether by digital media or advertising, people to know that you're still there, you're still supplying. And then also, to use that example of yours, of your electronics shop, the supply chain coming, say his electronic goods were coming from China. Can he still be able to source for these things? Are they still being used? Are there flights that can deliver these things to him? If no, then now again, he will have to look, where else can I be able to get this stuff? So for entrepreneurs and business owners, it is looking from end to end. First of all, do I have a market? Can I be able to supply it? Are my suppliers still in business? Can I find other ways to advertise myself? Can I talk to my creditors, my debtors, my bankers? You look at the whole chain and adjust accordingly. That is the way to recover. That's the way to survive.
We can't hear
you.
Sorry.
Kenji, looks like we are. Yes.
I'm back.
Now I can hear you.
Yes. So saying, Tony was actually trying to get an accessory from Amazon the other day. And then now the shipper, the logistic company that I was working with, those I was dealing with, was telling me you'll get it in 90 days. And I'm like, what? 90 days? Because there's a backlog of shipment. And then I just thought, we're those Kenyans who are not built in Kenya. So I had to source that thing locally. It was painful because it was a bit expensive. But it's just getting into the culture of also just sourcing things locally and supporting our very own. Yeah. Thank you for the guys who are watching. We have questions and comments. I think Zipporah, this is for you. This is a HR-related matter. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen. Thank you, Mondev, for sharing that. And she says, communication between employers and employees is very vital. Many times, employers assume the employee should understand why they are being let go or receiving a pay cut. So she continues to say, I have also observed many people parking their cars on the side of the road and displaying different commodities for sale. Not sure if these employers or employees reinventing themselves, but there's definitely a change in the way people are thinking. I'm glad she's noticed there's a change in how people are thinking. But to answer the first question, there are many times there's a lot of communication breakdown. Let me say, if I was an employer, I'm an employer. How do I break down this information to an employee? I'm trying to let them go, or I'm trying to cut their salary. How would we do it? Just if you could role play.
I think, Kenji, that's a very good question. One of the biggest challenges we have as employers, we like doing a one-way communication where the communication loop is not complete. And the communication loop is only complete when you get feedback from the people you're communicating to. Now, in the case where you are communicating to employees, it's very important for you to get feedback from them. And I keep on saying employees are the biggest assets you will ever have, because if you have goods and you don't have good employees, then at the end of the day, that product might not be able to move. So if you have good employees and you have a great product, the truth is your business will grow. Now, when it comes to communication, and in this particular scenario where businesses are facing challenges, the best approach is dialogue. Call your employees in a round table conversation. Bring out the challenges the business is undergoing through this season, and throw the questions back to them. How do you think we need what do you think we need to do to survive during the season? And you'll be surprised as some of these solutions will actually come from the employees themselves, and they'll say, maybe we can take a pay cut, maybe we can go on leave and exhaust our own leave days. So the dialogue will actually help the employer make a decision that is acceptable to the employee, because they're engaging the employee. The challenge comes in when at the top we make a decision and we communicate down, and the employee has no way of recourse of saying, I am not in agreement with this. Have you considered this? So there needs to be a two-way communication where you're getting feedback. And the truth is, as an employee, if you tell me to take unpaid leave, I will tell you, I don't think you're being fair. Okay? Now, it's up to you as an employer to actually show me why you think it's important or necessary for me to actually take that action, and how maybe you're going to support me during that season when I'm on unpaid leave. Like you said earlier, remember, these are people with families. They still have to pay rent, they still have to feed their children. And it will break my heart if I know my employees at home and they're not able to put food on the table for their kids. And some of the things I've seen, even with some of our clients, they have sent employees on unpaid leave, but they have taken the initiative of weekly giving food provision. And you see, they might not be able to meet their daily basic needs, but at least the basic need for food is met. And this is on assumption probably that the employee is able to negotiate with the landlord and say, look, I'm not able to pay your rent now. You might need to give me a reprieve for a couple of months, and we'll find a way of catching up. So there's a basic need for food. Forget about accommodation. Accommodation people will find. But food is a very critical basic need that we need to think about. So again, going back to communication, it needs to be a two-way channel communication.
Yep, I totally agree. Sometimes the employer usually finds or looks at himself as supreme, because they're the ones who are cutting the check. They always look at, now you are the one, you're subject to my laws. And I think that's it's an attitude change that employers should have.
That's a narrative that needs to change, because think about it this way: you are the employer, you need me as your employee. Okay, I'm the employee, I need you as my employer. So both of us need each other. There's nothing about superiority here. Both of us need each other. I need your money, you need my services. So we have to have that mutual understanding as we get into this relationship.
That's very true. In fact, I was the way some businesses prioritize customer service. I saw the model where Amazon, in every meeting, every brainstorm, they leave a chair empty, and they say that is the customer's chair. In this room, the sentiments and the interests of the customer must be met and must be heard. So the way you'd go around a meeting and say, what's your view? What's your view? Okay, what is the customer's view? And I thought it's a very practical way of just exemplifying what's important in your business and also giving it weight. But Tony, even as we wind up, we've already hit 30 minutes. So we would like to just wind up. And the thing about stakeholders, we are facing a lot of challenges with suppliers as well. I find like now the people who have contracted our services are renegotiating how they want the scope of work. So what have you seen also, and what are the ways or tools businesses can stay afloat through renegotiating with their stakeholders?
Okay. Now that's a very powerful. That's a very important point for any business. You're looking at the way it works, and looking at its relationships with its stakeholders. In the take of your suppliers, you have people who, I would assume, you have people who are supplying you with goods, and there is an agreement on how you ought to pay them. Then you have those who are distributing your goods, for example, or if you're distributing directly, then that's something different. You have other stakeholders, like now the way we're talking about employees. We have banks and other creditors who are also stakeholders if you have a loan with them. Now, the key, as I said earlier, is to look very, very quickly as to, first of all, am I in business? That's the first question. If you're in business, your product still has a market. There is still demand for the product. Then, if you have problems with your supply chain, those who are supplying you with the products either can't be able to deliver, like the way you faced with Amazon. Then you look at other options. The options would be local in your case, but now these local suppliers are probably more expensive. So, are you able as a business to be able to swallow that extra cost that is coming up with sourcing from a
Oops, sorry. I think we just lost Tony midway. Pole sana Tony, but I'm sure he'll be rejoining us. But just as I pick up on that conversation, so Zipporah, I've also realized banks have become more lenient. If you have a loan with them, they just don't strike you off. It's not now cutthroat. You give me my money, we take you to court. They've become very relational. So there's a friend of mine who told me they had to go into a contractual agreement where now post this COVID, which I don't understand what post-COVID is, because it's just I equate it to the way when Christ came, he just changed things, and it's changed forever. Now it's the same thing. This thing has changed. It's just a new way of life. So the people who still have the mindset that things will go back to that normal we knew, or what they're calling the new normal, but it's not the case. This is it. Guys should just get that. This is it. But as I was saying, dialogue is so critical. Yes. So Tony was saying dialogue with banks and creditors is so critical, so that you can restructure your loans, and transparency, showing them exactly where you're sourcing your money from, and they are being lenient. And remember the law now, they're not throwing people into CRB. I don't know if that changed. I remember they had halted so that people can renegotiate their contracts. But as we close, what do you think about that? Tony, I know you're saying something. You can tie it with whatever what you had started.
Yes.
And then we will wind up with Zippy.
All right. Sorry for being thrown out. Right? There was a problem there. Now, essentially, as a business, relook first of all, are you in business? If you're still in business, if you still have a market, then look at the whole supply chain, from your suppliers, your distributors, your creditors, your debtors, and look at that loop and see where are my risks, where is the weakest point in that link, and as a business, I readjust very quickly. There's something that I heard about, I think it's Amazon. Jeff Bezos says that Amazon is run like a startup. As much as it's a multi-billion, it's almost $1 trillion business, it's run like a startup. As in, I was told that the headquarters of Amazon is written day one office. As in, here it's like we began this our first day, and we are thinking, how do we survive?
Yeah.
And I think if there's something I can conclude to our listeners, if you're a business person, if you're managing a business, or if you're an entrepreneur, readjust your thinking to think like day one. Zipporah likes saying that because of COVID, every company is a startup. Every company now is a startup. You've got to think like a startup. And if you are a businessman listening to this, you've got to try and remember how it was when day one began. The things you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about sales, you're thinking about cash flow, you're thinking about capital, you're thinking about employees and all that. Everybody needs to go back to that place, because as you say, we don't know when post-COVID will come. So don't wait for the imagined post-COVID to start adjusting. Adjust now. Look at the whole thing. Look for new customers. Look for try and impress the existing customers. Look at your supply chain. Talk to your bankers. And conserve your money. That will be my conclusion.
Wow. Think like a startup.
Yes.
I love that. Tony, that one has gone to the books.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Zipporah, tell us maybe the parting shots based on what you are discussing.
I love what Tony has just said, that most of our businesses, we need to actually start thinking about our businesses as startup businesses. Because if we don't think about it like that, we will struggle to recover. You guys are talking about post-COVID, and yesterday we were talking about World Health Organization and the way they're planning to have, I don't know how many vaccines by 2021. And this is a realization actually that this thing might not be going anywhere anytime soon. So we need to actually start thinking about how do we move on with our lives and actually survive in the next coming years. Because if it's not going away, then we are not going to sit down and wait for it to go away. Okay. So one of the things that I would tell employers is we start thinking as startup businesses, we need to also re-engage our workforce. Okay. We need to communicate with them what our plans are in terms of recovering, in terms of re-engineering our business, in terms of coming up with a strategy that will help us recover. The other thing that I will tell our employers is to think about negotiating their contracts with their employees. If I have contracts that I'm no longer able to honor, I have benefits I've given employees I'm no longer able to honor. If this thing is going to linger long, then actually it means I'm not going to be able to fulfill the contractual agreement. So how do I start renegotiating contracts with employees? Again, there's a lot that goes in terms of renegotiating contractual agreements with employees, and it needs to be within the precepts of law. So again, it's important to start looking at those things and seeing what will work. Okay, what will work in terms of what I'm offering my employees and in terms of how the business is going to recover.
Fantastic. I like that. That's just restructuring yourself all through, and dialogue with every other person that you are related in this particular business. So thank you guys. I think our time is up. Next week we won't even say, maybe we'll have a guest on, and we are going to reveal them sometime this week. So guys who are watching, please follow our page on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You will see some of the content that we're pushing out, and the premise of this whole channel is to empower you as an employer, an employee, or a businessman. That's why we're here to serve you. And you can always reach us on our WhatsApp number, which is linked to the post. Click on it and you can get professional services from each one of us here. But for now, I think see you on the next one.
Look forward to that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.